After a long break of almost a year, the Buckley boys are back to take you beyond the headset and catch you up on the latest happenings of the sports world and more. From the Upper Peninsula of Michigan on this fine Friday morning, I am Nathan Buckley. Joining me as always is the Tweedledee to my Tweedledum, the Lloyd to my Harry, my twin brother, Brant Buckley. Brant, how are we doing today?
Well, good morning, Nate. Like you said, up here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, we're a little bit tired, having been on the road all day yesterday, but we're hanging in, and figured this would be a great time to start back up the podcast. So we're excited to be here and get to talk about sports.
Absolutely. Shout out to all of our fans that missed this show. We are glad to be back, Brent. Just like you mentioned, long car ride yesterday. It left a lot of time for thinking, didn't it?
It sure did, Nate.
So we're gonna
Let me just say that we definitely had a good amount of time to talk about what was going to go on in the podcast today, and a lot of other really stupid stuff, a lot of inside jokes. Let's just say we got our fill of comedy for the last few days. Let's just say that.
I would definitely say, and the weekend is just beginning, Brent. So we're gonna start off as always. Penny for your thoughts. Like I mentioned, a long car ride yesterday, Brent. What came to mind?
8 hours of a car ride, especially through the Upper Peninsula, you can see some things that you typically don't see in your daily life, and you can see some towns that you don't usually see in your daily life. So I compiled a random small towns list that we went through yesterday, and some of those towns include the towns of Champion, Michigami, Nestroya, Sini, Leonce, Baraga, Chassel, Rock River, Train, and Shingleton. And Nate, you and I were having a discussion. It was dark when we turned off of Highway 28 to come in the back way around Holton. The town that we were debating that technically made it because it has a Dollar General was Chassel.
Try to say all those towns with a mouthful of peanut butter. That is my challenge to you. Thank you so much for your thoughts there. Another thing that we noticed going through the Upper Peninsula, and we pointed this out last year, and we got reminded of it this year, Brant. There are three things that are just abundant in the Upper Peninsula, except for trees. Brant, that is cannabis shops, pasties, and Chris gas stations, Brant. Now, on the record, we are not going to dip into the first one. There is a cannabis shop up the road, like literally, I don't know, Brant, maybe a quarter mile from where we're staying. We are not high making this podcast. We are not planning on doing any of that this weekend. Maybe we try the pasties at some point this weekend. And we do know where the Chris gas station is here in Holton. But that's just one thing, Brant, that we pointed out. And in fact, you might have pointed it out. Cannabis, pasties, and Chris gas stations. Every time you come to the Upper Peninsula, you can't go more than 5 miles without seeing one of those.
Yeah, Nate, let me tell you, it got so far in my head that funny story, we were sitting at Pizza Hut last night after we had gotten into town, and I went to go order a melt, and instead of saying marinara sauce, I almost said the M word. And let's just say that the waiter got a pretty good kick out of it because he heard our conversation when we were sitting in the dining room about how much, how many cannabis shops there are up here. So, needless to say, when I almost said the other M word instead of marinara, he got a pretty good kick out of it.
All right, Brent, let's go ahead and start our next segment. We're going to start small and work our way larger. So let's start in the towns of Pewamo in Westphalia, several miles, almost, in fact, I believe almost exactly 500 miles away from where we are in Holton, Michigan. Let's start with your girls' golf team, Brant. Go ahead and tell me, you and the girls, you've had a pretty good year.
Yeah, Coach Bartlett and I are very, very pleased about where this team has come this season, especially just being a second year program. Not a lot of high expectations performance wise we're coming into this year. I mean, don't get me wrong. We want the girls to do well. We expected that there was a chance that everyone could do well, but our message coming in was that there were going to be no performance expectations. We weren't going to expect certain girls to shoot in the 40s or in the 50s or break 60 or whatever. Um we just expected a lot about character, expected a lot about leadership, and but one of the biggest problems that have been both in boys and girls golf the past few years has been stroke shaving, and that was one of the things that both Coach Bartlett and I, as well as Coach Kenishnik for the boys team, have really been leading the rally for, trying to make sure that um, honest scores are being submitted, that at least our girls and the boys for Coach Kenishnik, um, they're counting strokes correctly, and that they're being honest about it. So that was one of the biggest things we've come in, or we've had coming in, and we haven't had an issue with it. You know, this is honestly one of the best group of people I've ever worked with because they're just fun to be around. They're great characters. Uh, they're honest people, and they're hard workers. That's really the best that we could ask for them. You know, as far as success goes, haven't been able to quite break the barrier. You know, Bath has a really good program right now, with the twins that they have on the team. Actually, I don't think they're twins, they're just sisters. But they're shooting like low 40s every match. So that's pretty hard to compete with. They have a really, really good program this year. So they're definitely going to be one of the contenders next week at regionals. But as far as we've gone, we've been second to third in all the CMAC matches. We've been kind of back and forth with Perry a couple different times, kind of formed a little bit of a rivalry there. But with there being six or seven CMAC teams, we're pretty happy about where the results are with that. Top five in most of our invites. Even when there's 14, 15 teams there, we've been top half. It's been really great to see good success against really good and really big schools. A few weeks ago, won the Morrison Lake invite. A lot of D2, D3 schools there. So that was very cool. We were by far the smallest school there, and to come away with the win there, first program win, was really awesome. Let's just say that it's as coaches, speaking as coaches, me and Coach Bartlett, there was a feeling that's hard to describe when you see a program come from nothing, you know, just forming the program last fall, to seeing the girls win an invite against bigger schools is really awesome in the second year. So next week, Monday, they are heading to the CMAC match. It's just going to be 9 holes, and mind you, we're recording this on a Friday morning. So it was supposed to have been yesterday, 18 out at MSU, but due to the weather and the rain, they decided to postpone it. They pushed it back to Monday. They're just going to do 9 holes, and then we follow that up on Tuesday with regionals out in Perry. So it's going to be interesting because 27 holes of golf is a lot to walk and play in a matter of 2 days. But I have no doubt that our girls have been working really hard and that they're going to go in and show up a good result. And of course, you know, you always want to look ahead to upcoming seasons too. We've still got a lot to look forward to this year, with the CMAC match and regionals, and potentially having a shot at states if we can perform really well at regionals. But you know, next year we're going to have a really solid group of girls too, very hardworking, and it's in young. And this season, the group of girls, other than the seniors, they came in not with a lot of experience. In fact, most of them no experience at all, but they've really put in a lot of good work. And next year we're going to be competitive as well, returning a lot of hard workers and girls who are going to put in a lot of effort in the off season to um, make sure that they get better, and we'll be competitive next year as well.
So looking back on the season, Brent, what was your favorite memory of the entire season?
Well, it's easy to say that, you know, the feeling that we got after Morrison Lake was really special. That was if I had to pick an exact moment, I would say that the Morrison Lake win was certainly special. Just the feeling when Coach Bartlett came over to me and told me that we had won. It put a smile on my face, put a smile on her face. Everyone was smiling after that one. It felt really good. But overall, I mean, it's just been so cool to see a lot of the girls come out of their shells. So, likewise to me, when you come into a new situation, um, it's hard to be an extrovert. Let's just say that it's easy to be an introvert, easy to be quiet and all that. So seeing a lot of the younger girls come out of their shells, start to interact with everyone, and truly start to bond as a team, that's been really special this year.
Well, congratulations again to you and the team, Brandon, on that Morrison Lake Invitational win. I was out there shooting photography that day, left early so I can go get ready. So, we were going up, set up at Central Michigan that day for the football game. So congratulations on that, and good luck in that CMAC match and at regionals. We're going to move on to Pirate Volleyball. This has been something that I have been covering pretty well this season, I'd say. And the biggest question coming into the season for the volleyball team was how well they would be able to replace the talent that they lost last year. They lost quite a few big names last year to graduation. One of those being Danny Pohl, who is now playing volleyball down at Belmont Abbey. And obviously, it's huge keeping both Taylor Smith and Sage Martin, just to name a few. That's huge talent that they're bringing in. That's multiple years of varsity experience that they're keeping on the team. And really, it's been looking good for the Pirate volleyball team. They are just absolutely steamrolling the CMAC. It's looking good once again, just like they did last year. Annie Platty has stepped up for the team big time. You've seen Allie Nurnberg. Those are both sophomores, by the way, that have stepped up and filled the roles. That's just to name a few. The back line's looking really good. You got Caroline Hankspa. I always say this wrong. Libero, however you say it. Every time I say that word, it's a different pronunciation for me. Addison Treewaller back there on the back line. Just again to name a few, not picking this person over that person, but just to name a few. And again, it's dominant performance. When they go on Saturdays, they're playing in tournaments. They're just absolutely just killing it in tournaments. Every time I feel like, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, you look on Facebook and Coach John Phelan's posting in the Facebook group saying, we won again, another first place. And it's been dominant. So look for them to be a force in the playoffs. And of course, now that's October, they're coming out in their pink uniforms, which is good. It's good. Good cancer awareness. Obviously, October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That's a very cool thing to see them do. Moving on to cross country. This is something that obviously we don't broadcast, we don't cover a lot, looking to get out there at some point in this season. But I have done research. I have been keeping up with them. Most recently, both teams placed top 10 out of 28 schools at the Shepherd Invitational, and Colin Farmer improved his school record. So once again, Pirate cross country looking very well this year in both the boys and girls regards. Now, Brant, I'm going to bring you back in. We are going to collaborate on this last topic. This is Pirate football. Obviously, it's Friday morning. They're going to Jonesville tonight. At the time we record this, I don't know when it'll be posted. Just depends on how much time I have this weekend for editing. The Pirates, they're coming off that big rivalry win last week against the Fowler Eagles, Brant. How are we feeling about Pirate football right now?
Well, they showed a uh big jump. Let me just say that. Coming off the week one loss to North Muskegon, there was a lot of questions around the team about how good they were going to be, if they were going to be able to match the success that they've had in the past. And Coach Miller and the team has just continually said yes. They are going to be successful, that the week one loss is not a characteristic of the team, that it's not something that's going to be a common theme with the team. And since then, they've just played really, really, really solid football. I mean, they've handled their opponents very well. I mean, going back to multiple weeks ago, Langsburg is contending for the CMAC again. Are they coming in that they were going to be contending for the CMAC again? They went into Langsburg, a very hostile territory, I guess, in high school terms. I mean, I guess there is no extremely hostile territory in high school, but they came out with a win on in away turf. Came out with a very efficient, very productive win One that had a lot of people saying, okay, well, this is the team that we expected a little bit more of. And then you continue it on, go up to CMU, um, kick Sheboygan until they're just inches within their life. Couple of blowouts, both the JV and varsity, just really laying the hammer on them. Not so fun of a game to commentate. Let's just say that you and I both know that, Nate, that those blowout games can get a little bit long, and you really have to dig into blowout material. But they handle those games really well, and then follow that into Fowler, who's undefeated, who's really riding a big wave of momentum, especially coming off of last year's rivalry win, having the milk jug in their possession. They didn't want to have to leave it at PW, but they had to. PW, the guys just really took control of that game in the second half. That really the first half, it was back and forth, took some momentum going into halftime. PW did, lost that momentum coming out of the halftime. Late in the third quarter, you were wondering where's this game going to go, and in the fourth quarter, they just came out, put their foot down, and said, "We're keeping the milk jug here with us tonight." And that's really been a characteristic of this team, is that they've just taken what's theirs and really haven't let that one loss bother them. And right now they're in a prime position, already have a share of the CMAC title. And now next week they can go in and try to take it for take the full taking. Let's just say that.
Brant, you mentioned it from a broadcasting standpoint. First of all, shout out to you because you were on both the call of the JV and the varsity game up at Central Michigan up there up against Sheboygan. And again, just two absolutely blowout games. So I credit you that. In one respect, the Sheboygan varsity game, we couldn't have enough content to talk about. We were digging, we were looking for stuff. Meanwhile, you go to the Fowler game, on the other hand, and it's such a good game. Probably, I would say, the second best broadcast we've done on football, or on a football standpoint. The first being the Gladwin and Grand Rapids Catholic Central playoff game we did earlier in this, earlier or later last year. That is, towards the end of the football season there. And it's just like it's action packed, and I actually forgot to bring up a few sponsors in the first quarter, because all of a sudden you're watching the game and you look up the clock and you're like, uh-oh, we got a minute left in this quarter, and I'm supposed to give 3 sponsor shout outs here in the first quarter, and I missed 2 of them. So it's kind of a good change of pace. And I don't expect, maybe I'm wrong, knock on wood, I'm knocking on the table right now. I'm not going to say that it's going to be a blowout next week with Saranac. All I'm saying is that I expect the Pirates to win that one by at least a couple scores. So I kind of expect it to be more like the Sheboygan game over the Fowler game, if anything. Again, not giving the announcers jink, knocking on wood. Don't blame me, but it was a nice change of pace, don't you think, Brant?
It was, Nate, and that actually I find it ironic because those of you who watch us on the NFHS network, I know a lot of people were out at Pirate Field for the game last week. The game got cut short by 4 minutes on our broadcast. Like the final 4 or 5 minutes went without being broadcasted because of a software issue we had. The week before, we could have had that issue the week before, the final 4 minutes of a blowout game, and nobody would have batted an eye. No one would have said anything about it. Nobody would have, maybe we would have heard about it, but nobody would have really truly cared because everyone knew the result of the game. Now, thankfully, by this point, PW had taken a couple score lead. So it was right after the Gabe Miller interception. Maybe it was Dylan May, I can't remember. It was May, that's who it was. You could assume that they're going to run out the clock, they're going to take knees, and they're going to take this win. But there's a lot of uncertainty. The way that game was back and forth, don't get me wrong, we're thankful that happened in a 14-point game instead of it being a tie game or a 7-point game or whatever, where now people are left with a cliffhanger thinking what happened, and now they got to try to figure out what happened. But you never want that to happen. But it's just ironic that it happened in one of the closest games that we've probably ever called at Pirate Field, being that there's been a lot of blowout games through the years and not like the week before up at CMU where the result of the game was already decided by that point. So next we're going to take it from the high school landscape to the college landscape, Nate. It's one of our favorite times of the year, college football. Saturdays are always packed full of watching college football, basically from noon to 10 o'clock at night. Um, Greatest time of the year. Let's start with the local standpoint. Michigan State. Let's start with our boys in blue. What's your thoughts on the Michigan season so far?
Boy, it's looking good for Big Blue Brand. I'm telling you, it's really looking phenomenal for Michigan right now. Roman Wilson and JJ McCarthy are just on a next level when it comes to, throwing the ball and receiving the ball. I mean, I can't remember a time that a Michigan quarterback and receiver had this kind of chemistry. I mean, every single week they're in the end zone. Every single week, JJ finds Roman Wilson. Obviously, going into this year, you knew Blake Corum's back, Donovan Edwards back. You knew that the run game is set. The only thing that surprises me about the run game, and you and I have talked about this, little surprised they haven't used Donovan Edwards as much as I thought they would. We've seen a lot of Blake Corum. I'm sure Donovan Edwards will get his time. I'm not worried about him transferring or anything. Just maybe a little bit surprised, Brant, that we're seeing that out of the run game. And on the passing, once again, too, we're seeing JJ to Roman Wilson. Maybe we spread it out a little bit more, or maybe they spread it out a little bit more. But I mean, heck, what a catch last week for that touchdown between from JJ to Roman Wilson there. And on defense, again, Brant, you and I absolutely loved it. Kenneth Grant bringing down that interception last week against Nebraska. Boy, what an interception. We've seen Mikey Sainristil come down a couple times at the ball. A lot of big guys on defense making plays. And boy, Michigan, maybe, there's still that debate. Can they compete with Georgia? I think this is their best chance than ever. Maybe a little bit biased. I think this is their best chance to compete with Georgia this year.
I agree, Nate. And what's amazing about this Michigan team is that they're having a lot of success for being a very selfless team. So you look at some of the stats. As of Friday, before the college football weekend starts, Roman Wilson leads the nation in touchdown receptions. Blake Corum leads the nation in touchdown rushes. JJ McCarthy leads the nation in percentage, in completion percentage. Those are three really important stats when it comes to success. And albeit, I know people are going to say they haven't played anybody. I understand. They haven't played a top 10 opponent. They haven't played a ranked opponent. I understand. But it doesn't matter. When you can have the success that you're having, it puts teams on notice. You look, Georgia, they weren't, we'll get to this here in a minute, but they weren't playing an impressive team last week with Auburn. Struggled. There's been a few times they've struggled when they weren't really playing an impressive team. Again, we'll get to that here in a minute. Michigan has been very consistently solid, with the exception of the first half of the Bowling Green game. They've been pretty solid the entire season. And to be such a selfless team, as you mentioned, Donovan Edwards, he has not gotten the workload that he's wanted this year. We have not seen the success out of him that we wanted this year. Yet he's content. If you see Roman Wilson, if Cornelius Johnson or Sherrone Morgan, I believe it's Sherrone Morgan. I could be wrong with that. If you see another guy score a touchdown, you could consistently sit there and think with most teams in the nation, there's someone who's sitting there saying, man, that could be me. Or for prime example, Khalil Mullings in Nebraska. He got the touchdown run on a 4th down and 1, whereas Donovan Edwards hasn't had a touchdown all year. Blake Corum could have had a chance to touch the ball. But when Khalil Mullings got back to the sideline, the first person who greeted him was Donovan Edwards with a pat on the helmet. It's a very selfless team. Guys don't care that if they're touching the ball, if they're not touching the ball, if they're getting their receptions, their carries, it doesn't matter. As long as the team's winning, everyone's pretty content. Let's shift a little bit. Just talk for a quick moment with MSU. In light of everything going on, we are not going to discuss that. Everyone knows what it is. everyone knows how it will be. I will say that Harlan Barnett is doing a great job at keeping those guys motivated despite not having a lot of success right now. I do like Harlan Barnett. I felt like since the beginning, he's a great coach to take over for the moment. Nate, we were watching the MSU Iowa game last week. Um, just other than the first two games of the season, with Michigan State playing CMU and Richmond, handling it pretty well. Granted, there's that change in coaches between there. What's been your take on Michigan State so far this season?
Well, Brant, like you said, I don't want to mention it too much, but it's there. Do have to mention it. My biggest worry for MSU is how much the Mel Tucker situation is distracting them. That's my biggest take. It's kind of hard to tell because we're not there on the team, you know. But that's my biggest worry for MSU right now. They seem to be doing okay. But right now, I do have to say this about MSU. Their defense, as hit and miss as they are, they have a few key players there on defense, Cal Halliday being one of them. That can go up there and make a play. And if MSU right now, I think their ceiling is if they make a bowl game, that's I don't want to say a miracle, but that's just kind of how I view MSU right now. Is every game from them from now on is going to be an absolute dogfight, and it's going to have to be treated that way if they're going to win that game. If they're going to make a bowl game, they're going to have to do some wild things. But it's going to start with your team leaders like Cal Halliday, Noah Kim. He's improving. He's not looking great. I will say Noah Kim is improving. That offense is going to improve a little bit more towards as we get towards the end of the season. Nathan Carter, he's going to be a workhorse in terms of running the ball, carrying the ball. But a team that you look at and maybe isn't the most talented team in the Big Ten, you got to have those dogs on that team that are going to want to go out there and prove, hey, we may not be the most talented squad, but we want to win games just as badly as anybody else in the Big Ten.
I think it's interesting that you bring up the key players on defense because really their defense is pretty solid. Probably at least top half of the Big Ten. They have a pretty solid defense. My concern for them is the offense. They go into Iowa this past weekend and don't score an offensive touchdown. Their only touchdown comes off a pick six, scoring by the defense. Um, that's with all due respect, kind of pitiful in my opinion. I mean, I know Iowa has a good defense. They've always had good defense, but albeit without Malik Carr, they didn't have Malik Carr for the entire game. Let me just say it wasn't uncharacteristic of Michigan State for the entire year. If it was a one and done thing, I'd be a little more apt to say, okay, whatever. They didn't have Malik Carr, they're fine. But ever since they started Big Ten play, really starting with Washington, that offense has just struggled. And that's my concern for them. Like you said, they are going to have to win some games that they aren't supposed to in order to make a bowl game. Realistically, here, they play three top 10 teams, probably top five teams by the time it's all said and done, with Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Those on paper right now, and I get it, it's college football, anything can happen. But on paper, you kind of have to expect them to be losses right now. So if you just assume that those three are going to be losses, it then gets you at six. They then have six losses. They have to win the rest of the games. So for Michigan State, they have to win the games that they realistically do have a chance at. And if they can't, then they're going to have to go beat a powerhouse like Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan. They're going to have to pull a major upset if they're going to want to be playing a postseason game this year. Um, it's an uphill battle for them, but I feel like once they can finally get this stuff sorted out with the coaching situation, I feel like that they'll be on a better track. Let's just say this: the bye week for them is going to be very useful for them this weekend. Get regrouped, get refocused, and start moving towards what is going to be the grind of the rest of the season. So let's quickly touch on the Big Ten, Nate. What's your biggest takeaway from the Big Ten play so far this year?
Well, I'll tell you this, Brant. There's definitely a big three: Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Let me tell you, Ohio State struggled either last week or a couple weeks ago. I can't remember. It's kind of been a few long weeks, Brant. But, struggled against Notre. It must have been 2 weeks ago because Notre Dame was in at Duke last week. Um, they pulled out that win at the last minute against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a very good team, don't get me wrong. That showed that they can go into a hostile environment and pull out a win with their young quarterback. Now, I'm looking at the end of the season, obviously a little bit of bias day. It's going to be a hostile environment in Ann Arbor at the end of November. So Ohio State showed a few weeks ago that they can go into a hostile environment, play a game, gut it out, maybe not lead the entire game, and then get it at the end. So Ohio State's going to be tough. Penn State looking very good. That's going to be an interesting battle. And obviously Michigan, who has a very, very tough 3 games. We were listening to a Michigan football podcast yesterday, and they pointed out final 3 games: Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Absolutely the toughest 3 games Michigan will play in the Big Ten. So those are the top 3: Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, and just behind them, I place Maryland right now.
And I do have to agree with you. Right now, the talk of the Big Ten is Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. I've been interested to see how Penn State's new quarterback, Drew Aller. I don't know if it's Aller, if it's Allar. I've heard it both ways. I say Aller. So if it's wrong, don't come at me. Um, I've been interested to see how he plays because there's a lot of hype around this kid. Well, every time I turn him on, he just doesn't seem to find it. I understand there's a difference between being able to do what Big Ten quarterbacks do, which really is not flashy. Big Ten quarterbacks most of the time are not flashy. They're like the way that Joel Klatt described Michigan this week, and really I could say the same thing for a lot of Big Ten teams. They're boa constrictors. They just squeeze the life out of you. You know, Big Ten offenses a lot of times aren't going to just throw the ball for like 600 yards like you see against like the Pac-12 schools like USC, Washington, Colorado's having a really good season passing the ball. Um, but with that being said, I haven't seen what the hype around Drew Aller is. I'm gonna be interested to see when he comes and plays these power teams like Michigan and Ohio State, how well he does. But with the Big Ten and still in discussion, um, man, it's just a big blow for Iowa to lose Cade McNamara for the year. In case you haven't heard, it's a season-ending MCL injury. Uh, that's just a big blow because originally I had Iowa circled as a team who could make the Big Ten championship. That being said, no, I think Wisconsin's the clear front runner in the West. But if it's any indication, Iowa's offense is going to struggle without Cade McNamara. Not like they didn't struggle a few games with Cade McNamara, but that offense is going to struggle these next few weeks. So, real quick, talk about the national spotlight, Nate. What's been your biggest takeaway from the national spotlight?
I'll tell you what, Brant. It's on everybody's minds. Love them or hate them. Colorado, Coach Prime. Personally, I think we have conflicting ideas on Coach Prime. I believe, just from what I've picked up with conversations with you. I love Coach Prime. I love what he's doing out there. Maybe it's the fact that he helped me win a little bit of money in week 1 on DraftKings. And maybe it's the fact that, he's taken a 1-win program that was last year and already turned it into a 3-win program this year. I love Coach Prime, Brant. That's my national spotlight outside of the Big Ten right now.
Here's the thing on Coach Prime, Nate. I like Coach Prime. I like Colorado. What I do not like is the media attention around him. Okay, I get it. It's a poverty program that gets turned around by Coach Prime. I love it. I love the story around it. With that being said, does Big Noon kick off on Fox need to go there for 3 straight weeks. I just don't think so. It's like if you want to call it Colorado kickoff or Colorado pregame show and just go to Colorado every week, then do so. But don't talk yourself up as a traveling week to week set that goes to these college stadiums and then just go to Colorado for 3 straight weeks. That's the thing that drives me nuts. Game day went there. I understand that. I understand big noon kickoff going there for 1 week. But when the big noon kickoff game isn't even Colorado and the game day crew goes out there or the pregame crew goes out there, it's just a little redundant to me. I'm just not a fan of that. And I love Coach Prime. I think it's great what he's doing in Colorado. I want to see him do well, but I just wish the media would take a slight half step down and just realize that, they don't need to super overhype this team.
I may say though, Brant, last year that was Michigan. Last year that was Michigan. It seemed like every single week Fox Noon kickoff was in Ann Arbor. It was always Gus and Joel. And I'm not saying you didn't have a problem with it last year, because we have had conversations about the fact that, wow, we have Gus and Joel again on Fox, and it was lovely when it was Michigan. But it's not. This isn't the first time they've done something like that. Last year it seemed to be Michigan. This year it's Colorado.
But it's different because the big noon kick game hasn't been Colorado week in, week out, yet the pregame set always goes to Colorado. When they have like Urban and all those guys, Bush and all them on the pregame show, it's always in Colorado. I always thought that it traveled with the big noon game. Wherever Gus and Joel are at, that's where they're at. And then all of a sudden they go to Colorado for multiple weeks. I'm like the pregame or the noon game was like Ohio State maybe, and the set was in Colorado, and I was like, this just doesn't make any sense to me. That's the thing that I don't love, but it's a great atmosphere. So, I guess that's what they're looking for is great atmospheres.
In their defense too, Brant, it's a little hard when you're out, when you kind of start to go out west, because you start to deal with time changes a little bit. So that might be a little bit why maybe it's not always the noon game, is because, and they have had a few noon games, but that I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that's a 10 o'clock start out in Boulder. So that's pretty early. I don't know. Obviously, we've gotten up and gone to U of M for some noon games and whatnot. We have to get up pretty early. Imagine a 10 o'clock game.
All right, Nate. Next, we're going to move into a topic that we're bringing back, something that we've been doing since basically we started doing the podcast. Highlights, lowlights, just basically touching on good moments, bad moments from sports within the last week or last few weeks. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. What's your highlight for the week?
Well, Brant, I'm going to do this together because it is combined. It's kind of one plays off the other one. And you were in the crowd. In fact, not really in the crowd. You were in the press box doing public address announcing for this moment. Earlier this week, 8th grade junior football for the Pirates are playing Lakewood. Kevin Hafner hit a 33-yard field goal to end the half. Now, obviously, I saw it on Facebook. You were there for it. That was pretty cool. Do you want to touch on that real quick?
Let me just say, if you saw the video or if you were there in person, it had the distance of 40. Let me just say that he didn't just barely sneak it in. It had at least 40 yards on it. And let me just say, he was doing kickoffs too. He was booting them through the end zone. So there were a few of them that he really checked up on, like the 2 or 1 yard line, and caused some issues for Lakewood special teams. So he's got a boot on him, but I'll let you take back over, Nate.
So that's pretty impressive, especially for an 8th grader, man. That's just like you said, he's got a boot on him and whatnot. And man, it's incredible. 33 yards. Now, to play off of that, this I believe happened last night or the night before. I saw it on ESPN this morning. Liberty, their kicker, Nick Brown, it wasn't blocked. He missed a 39-yard field goal. Now, That doesn't sound too bad. I'm gonna put the screenshot up on screen for you here. That's how bad he missed it. As you can see, I circled the ball nowhere close to where it's supposed to be. Wasn't blocked. And obviously, kicking's hard. Kicking is very hard. It's one of the hardest things to do in football. But you go from Kevin Hafner making a 33-yard field goal in an eighth grade game to this Liberty kicker, a college football kicker, missing a 39-yard kick horribly.
Thank you for that, Nate, and a great way to tie those two in. That was very clever. For me, my highlight of the week, or I guess the past few weeks, Jameson Williams being reinstated by the NFL, now able to play for the Lions again. You know, you give the fist bump. We both love it. Just the NFL gambling policy change. Look, I understand rules are rules and you have to follow them, but I felt like that was a rather stupid guideline. Okay. So it wasn't betting on NFL, it wasn't fixing games, it wasn't any of that. Um, it was betting on something stupid. If I remember hearing right, like rumor has it, it was like snail racing or something stupid along the lines of that. Not the smartest decision by JMO, but certainly not something that should have warranted a suspension like that. Um, and so the fact that the NFL changed their policy on it, which then reinstates Jameson Williams coming into this week against the Carolina Panthers. Um, it's great. I'm going to be interested to see how he does Sunday, as we've mentioned, filming this on Friday. You know, it's going to be great to see him play. Nate, you got anything to say on JMO?
You know, Brant, we were at that game last year. His first game, first game with the Lions. He caught that big touchdown. And boy, that place was electric. I think I know a lot of people have contrasting ideas on Jameson Williams. Was it a good pick? Wasn't it a good pick so far? Maybe not, because just how much he missed. I'm excited for this guy. I'm excited to see how they're going to use him this year.
It'll be definitely interesting to see. Nate, I know something that a lot of Lions fans are looking forward to with that. Um, Going into my low light. So we're getting into the MLB playoffs. Already gotten through the wild card series with four sweeps going on. So all the MLB teams that either missed the playoffs or have already been eliminated from the playoffs, they've all made a post thanking their fans. Every single one of them, except for one. Any idea on which team that could possibly be, Nate?
Oh, boy. I know the Orioles have done some pretty questionable things this year, but they're still in the playoffs, so it wouldn't be them. Oh, I don't know, Brent. Who is it?
It's the Oakland Athletics. And when you think about it, it's no surprise because there's been that love-hate relationship between Oakland and the baseball team and the fans and all that. But come on, like for a team, you know, your organization to not thank the fans that did come out and did pay their money to come see and to support the team. That's just kind of a low blow in my opinion. Like I saw something a couple days ago about it. I thought maybe once it got out there, they'd finally make something about it. I checked moments before this podcast. There's nothing about it. Maybe the Oakland A's will hear our podcast and will make a post about it. But, you know, to me, you got to thank your fans. The ones who, I understand they don't have a ton of supportive fans right now, but to the ones that do come out and do support the team, you got to find a way to say thank you. And, you know, at least it's good PR if you do it. So that's got to be my light for the week.
I mean, at the very least, Brent, you got to thank the fans of the High A affiliate. Come on.
No kidding. Got, you know, let me just say, the High A affiliate of the Oakland A's thank their fans. They found a lot of ways to thank their fans. So why can't the Oakland Athletics do that too?
In case you don't know, in case you don't pick up on it, High A affiliate, of course, being the Lansing Lugnuts. Go nuts, Brent.
Go nuts, Nate.
All right, Brant, moving on. We're going to talk about one of the hottest new topics in the NFL, the brand new Lions. Brant, I know you just came over. I gotta call you out a little bit. You came over from the Colts last year, but you picked a fantastic time to come over. Boy, it's been a fun year so far for the Lions, huh?
Yeah, let me just say this. Um, with the Colts versus Lions debate, um, my heart's been with the Lions for a few years. Especially for Grandpa, seeing the Lions do well was top priority for me. So it wasn't really a change of fandom, it was just affiliation. My heart's been with the Lions for the past few years, and with some certain things going on with the Colts, I just decided that, that team's not worth it in my opinion anymore. And it's got nothing to do with their success, nothing to do with any of that. It's just the fact that I'm not a fan of what management's doing there. I'm not a fan of how they're making decisions. Not to go too much into a rant about it, but my heart's been separated from them for a few years, so I figure I might as well declare my fandom with the team that I actually have my heart associated with. So, but yeah, with the brand new Lions, as you said, Nate, man, they have been doing impressive things this year. I mean, albeit they have the one loss, the overtime loss to Seattle, in which a coin flip basically determined that game. They are a coin flip, Nate, a coin flip from being undefeated. Did you ever think you'd ever hear that as a Lions fan? Especially when you look at their schedule, having to play at Arrowhead against the Chiefs, having to play Thursday night in Green Bay last week when everyone was saying that the Packers were going to roll the Lions, they were going to take control of the division, they're going to win the division again this year. And this brand new Lions team is now leading the NFC North, albeit early, but what a moment. What a time to be a Detroit Lions fan, Nate.
Brant, you mentioned the Chiefs game. Um, I remember hearing that was going to be the season opener. Mitch called me, our brother Mitch, obviously, in case for those of you who, I mean, let's be honest here, everybody knows Mitch. Um, he called me and said, "Hey, sounds like the Lions are going Arrowhead week 1." I said, "Bring it on." Exactly what Mitchell said too. Dan Campbell and this Lions team, man, they don't shy away. The narrative was there. Chiefs coming off the Super Bowl, never, ever, ever losing the month of September, especially at home. They don't lose an Arrowhead in September. Patrick Mahomes has never lost in September. That's all we heard ever since they announced it, really, which I think was a couple, maybe 2, 3 months before the game itself. You were able to tell right there who was bought in on who was drinking the Kool-Aid and who wasn't. Because you were either like, "Oh no, bad idea, this ain't gonna go well," or you're like, "Hey, bring it on. High spotlight, lights are bright, bring it on." The Lions, they killed it. I get it. Travis Kelce wasn't playing. Chris Jones wasn't playing. The Lions for years, man, they found ways to lose games under any way possible. Really, I mean, like NFL record field goals, bullcrap penalties, uh, just stupid mistakes, and they found a way to win a game. Not only that, next week you go into the home opener, the hype is up. It's hype. It's hype, Brant. I was mad that we didn't get tickets to that game, especially considering the fact that we were talking about it. We could have done it. I was mad. They end up losing that one, and that's okay. Because I think that was kind of a kick in the teeth to the defense. It showed the defense, and I think Hutchinson and I can't remember who the other guy was, said something about it that, this is a wake up call. And since then, I mean, Brian Branch was electric the last few games. I know he's kind of battling an injury, but the defense has been great. They held Bijan Robinson to barely anything in that Atlanta game. It was absolutely phenomenal to watch that Atlanta game last week as well against Green Bay. Um, the defense has just been incredible, Brant.
And one thing I do have to say about that whole thing, Nate, the whole Chiefs opener game. You mentioned the silver lining that Travis Kelce, Jones, they didn't play. But coming into that game, when they found out that Jones wasn't going to be playing, when they said that Kelce wasn't going to be playing, what did everyone say? It doesn't matter. The Chiefs are still going to win. It doesn't matter. Nobody gave the Lions a chance, even after Travis Kelce and Jones. They weren't going to play. Well, everyone says, well, no, they still don't have a chance. It's still the Lions. It's still the Chiefs. Chiefs still have Patrick Mahomes, and they win the game. And call the silver lining all you want. There is no asterisk. Mike Tirico said after the game that maybe with an asterisk. To me, that's not going to go on a side rant, but that's one of the most unprofessional things a sportscaster can do is degrade someone on the win. And not that he meant to do it, but he degraded the win a little bit by saying, well, there's an asterisk on it with no Kelce, no Jones. It was a win. They went into hostile territory and they won that game. So to me, there is no silver lining on it. A lot of people may consider that there is. I know the Lions fans, we don't consider that. It's a win. In the end of the day, it's a win. Same thing with the Packers, going into the Packers and beating them on Thursday night. Let me just say there is no silver lining on that game. They took it to them in that first half. Absolutely took it to them. When the Packers started to show a little bit of signs of hope, they shut it down. The defense stepped up and they won that game in hostile territory. And may I just say, these hostile territories are starting to become even less and less hostile territories because the one pride travels. You know that you're starting to see more Honolulu blue in these stands more than ever. There was a Packers insider who said that was the most opposing color he has ever seen in Lambeau Field. And there are people who are saying similar things about the Chiefs. Outside of a playoff game, that is the most blue, that is the most opposing color that they have seen ever at Arrowhead outside of a playoff game. Lions fans are traveling. There's a lot of hype around this team, and these hostile territories are starting to be taken over a little bit by some one pride fans. Let's just say that.
Big shout out, Brand, to one of our biggest fans, Garrett O'Brien, G Baby Buckets, man. He called it Ford Field West, and he was not wrong about that. Yeah, I mean the Lions fans, they're traveling. They're traveling,
Yeah.
man.
The funny thing is, Garrett and a group of his guys went out to went out to the Green Bay game, and going back and forth with him. And I asked him, I had to ask him and say, how much fun was it? And he said it was awesome. He said the giving the Packers fans crap, giving them some gestures that you would expect to see at a Packers Lions game. He said the walk out of the stadium was so much fun after that one. He just said it was a blast. I'd love to get to Lambeau one of these times for a Lions Packer game. It's a bucket list. It's a bucket list place, and let me tell you, there's no better time. 4 or 5 straight now that the Packers have lost to the Lions. The Lions are on fire against the Packers, and let's see how they can use that momentum from last week to carry it into this week with Carolina.
Few more things on the Lions, Brand, before we move on. Two more things, in fact. First of all, I want to talk about the division. Again, Friday morning, the Bears coming out with their first win last night in almost a year. Looking at the division, the Bears have one win. The Vikings have one win. The Lions have a step up on the Packers. We don't want to look too far ahead, but we can. The team can't. We can as fans. If we want to, we got to be careful with it. But do you think the Lions? Where do you think the Lions stand in terms of winning the division this year?
I think they've got a good chance. I'm gonna say they have the best chance that they've had in a long time to win the division. As you mentioned, Bears are down. They've got one win. They won last night. I still don't see them as a threat. I just don't think the Vikings. I could see the Vikings winning some games to make it close, but I think Detroit's got a legitimate chance to win most of, if not every division game this year. I think they have it in them. Is it possible for them to win every division game? Yes. Do I think it could happen? Yes. Will it happen? I'm not going to guarantee it. As you mentioned, Vikings seem to be a little bit down this year. Bears are down. just proved that the Packers, that they manhandled the Packers the first half. So it's I'd say it's Detroit's to lose at this point. Obviously, there's a lot of season left. There's a lot of time left, but let me just say is especially with the non-division games that they have this year, they're playing the NFC South, being the Falcons, the Buccaneers, Carolina, and New Orleans. Those are all winnable games. I mean, they beat Atlanta, who at the moment is considered to be one of the favorites in that division. It's kind of still up for grabs between all four of the teams, but they've proven that they can beat Carolina in the past. The Buccaneers, they'll have a shot against the Buccaneers, and then they'll have a shot against the Saints. Let me just say, there's no non-conference games or non-divisional games. I understand that the division plays the same divisions, so everyone else in the division has to play those same four games, but they're easily winnable games. They're not games that Detroit could easily get tripped up on. And now that they have the upper hand over the other three teams, just whether it be by record or whether it be by one win against them already, they've definitely got the upper hand.
Now, Brant, finally, I want to talk about the rookies for the Lions. Quite a few. I'm actually going to go out and say most of them are doing pretty well. A lot of them. Obviously, Branch, Laporta looking very well. Campbell, he's had his moments. The one that I kind of look at and question so far, Jahmyr Gibbs, just because, and I understand we got to give him some time. Jahmyr Gibbs, they're using him. They said they're going to use him in different ways that we haven't quite seen yet. Brant, your thoughts on that?
You see, I'm not concerned. A lot of people are concerned. A lot of people have blood in the game or have skin in the game rather, with fantasy football. That's where people are getting mad, because I can tell you right now, if you don't have Jahmyr Gibbs on your fantasy team and you're a Detroit Lions fan, you're not complaining about Gibbs not getting many touches. It's about winning. That's the way it is in Detroit. It's a very, as we mentioned with Michigan earlier, it's a selfless team. It's Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't care if he's getting the touches or not. He knows that his time is going to come. It's just all about winning right now. And for a lot of people in Detroit, I understand we'd like to see more of Gibbs, but right now Montgomery's doing great things. Goff's doing great things. St. Brown is. You give the touches to those who are proving that they can do the right things. And basically, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Don't try to incorporate Jahmyr Gibbs more than you have to when what you're doing is being successful. That's at least my opinion on it. I'm sure there are Lions fans that disagree and say that they'd like to see more Jahmyr Gibbs. If we see more Gibbs, great. I'd like to see them incorporate him a little bit, but I don't think it's necessarily a must-have right now, considering that the team's doing pretty well to start the season.
I have to say, Brant, I bought it on Sam Laporta. I'm darn sure all of my leagues. I'm positive of that. All 6 of my leagues, I have Sam Laporta. It's panning out. It's panning out very well. So the 2 guys I took a chance on this year, and we'll get to fantasy in a minute, Sam Laporta, and I'll leave the other one cliffhanging for our next segment.
All right, Nate, let's get into our final segment. Let's talk some fantasy football. First thing I got to ask, how are your teams doing? Because I sure hope they're doing better than my teams.
I will say, Brant, as a matter of fact, they are. I'm one of them. I'm not. I'm 1-3. One of my leagues, 2-2. I'm in 6 leagues to be exact. A lot of them. 1-3 in one of my leagues, 2-2. I'm 3-1 in 3 of them, and the 3P league that we're in, I really haven't checked that in like 3 weeks. So I don't know. I don't know how I'm doing in that. I believe I have DJ Moore on my bench, which hurt me last night. But yeah, it's going pretty well. Like I mentioned earlier, my work league is probably the one that I'm focused on, one of the most, other than our fancy league. Shout out to all of our brothers there in the fancy league. Just because it's got the most reward at the end of the year for a top finish. I mentioned it just a minute ago too. I have Sam Laporta in almost all of my leagues, and he has been a monster for me. In fact, I had TJ Hawkinson in a couple other leagues, Brant. I traded him to you in one of my leagues because I'm just like, I don't need both Hawkinson and Laporta. And I'm sure in heck not giving away Laporta. So I will say though, Austin Eckler, if you can hear me, get out on the football field because brother, I need you big time.
Well, I can tell you, Nate, just while you were giving that little spiel there, I did pull up the Pirate Pride Productions League. The current leader is me at 4-0 because this is the first time I've checked as well, and you're right behind me at 3-1. So
Really?
we're showing those high school kids up. The next teams are 2-2, 1-3, 1-3, and 1-3. So we're looking pretty good. That's about the only league that's going well for me so far. 0-4 in a couple of them, 2-2 in one of them as well. Brant's been struggling. Let me just say that I've been thinking the last couple weeks about how I can make my teams better. Um, Made some changes last week. Ended up losing to some doofus by like 1 point last week because Dalvin Cook got a reception, and man, I was so mad because Deebo Samuel only had point 0.6. I could have easily won that, but that's frustrating when you're 0-4. I've been waiting for Cooper Kupp to come back. It's projected that he's going to play this week, so let's hope that he does, and um, I can get a little bit of some balance back in one of the leagues. And I mean, I'm on a 2-game losing streak in the other one, so um, Brant's not been happy with fantasy these past couple weeks. Let's just say that. So, Nate, your biggest takeaway from the first 4 weeks, who's caught your eye?
Well, like I mentioned, Laporta. I left you cliff hanging at the end of our last segment there. The other player that I took a gamble on, I rolled the dice on, Jake Moody. And boy, has he been panning out well. He is absolutely killing it for the San Francisco 49ers. It's incredible. I love having those guys on my team. I will tell you what, though, Brant, we were talking about this yesterday on the way up. My fancy league, which I'm 3-1 in, or our fancy league, that is, we're in it with about 8 other guys, 10-man league. I'm looking at my team, and I get it. It's 10-man league, so you're not going to have the best team. I have Eckler, who, again, Eckler, I doubt you're watching this, my man. If you're watching, get back on that football field, please. I need you in that league. I don't know how my team, looking at it, I'll put up who I have on the screen here. I don't know how my team is 3-1, to be honest with you. And same thing, kind of looking at my work league is like, how am I 3-1? But I'll tell you what, another guy who's caught my eye on my team in the work league, Tyreek Hill. He's been a beast this year. He's been absolutely phenomenal. So those are the guys that are catching my eye in a good way. Again, Laporta, Jake Moody, Tyreek Hill. Brant, who's catching my eye in a not so good way, and I guarantee you're going to agree with me the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, I'll put my work league, my team up on the screen here. I have both Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase. Brant, I know you have Joe Burrow and a couple other Bengals across your teams. Brant, what's going on with the Cincinnati Bengals? Why aren't they? They're a stick in the mud, Brant. You know, you roll the dice. Joe Burrow gets this big contract. I don't have him in any leagues, but I know you took a chance on him. He gets this big contract, and Cincinnati's offense can't do anything this year. And Brant, I'm frustrated with it. I know you are extremely frustrated with it.
Yeah, all I can say is, yeah, I've got Jamar Chase in 2 of my leagues, and I've got Joe Burrow in another one with 2 quarterbacks, mind you. So while everyone else's quarterbacks are going out and throwing up like 50 points, 60 points combined, I got Joe Burrow who's laying an egg, hasn't passed 10 yet. It's like, dude, is it that hard to find Jamar Chase? Like, Jamar Chase hasn't gotten a touchdown, maybe one touchdown all year. Joe Burrow hasn't broken 10 yet in fantasy football, at least in my league, at least the way that we score it. Like I said, everyone else's quarterbacks are going up and throwing 25 to 30 points up on the board, and I am just getting beat by insanely large numbers. Um, Last week it was tough. Someone who's caught my eye and caught everyone's eye. Never thought I'd say this in a million years. Puka Nakua. Who is Puka Nakua? He's not going to be. I shouldn't say he's not going to be relevant. His workload is going to come down when Cooper Kupp comes back. He's going to come back down to earth a little bit. But last week in two different leagues, I was playing Puka Nakua, or I was playing against Puka Nakua and Devin Chain. At least everyone corrects me on how to say it. I always say it wrong apparently, but I got reamed in a couple leagues last week because the two teams that I played had the same three guys: Puka Nakua, Devin Chain, and AJ Brown, and each one of them went for over 30 points or darn near close to 30 points. It's been a struggle for me. Puka Nakua's caught my eye. Achain had some good weeks. Uh, Honestly, one of the better takeaways I've had on my team, Michael Pittman, got him for dirt cheap in all three of my leagues, and he's been performing really well up until last week. Last week he kind of struggled, but um, it's been good because it's added some depth to my lineup. And in the two leagues that I'm struggling, it's been trade bait. I mean, Nate, I sent him to you in the one Cobra League for TJ Hawkinson. People are going to say it's a bad deal. It was a good deal. I don't remember all the details of it, but mind you, Nate had TJ Hawkinson and Sam Laporta, and I needed a tight end badly. I had Fat Pat Fryermuth um as my starting tight end. So Nate is trying his hardest not to giggle right now, but so am I. Let me just say, Fat Pat was not cutting it for me. Okay, so this is how Nate and I crack each other up, is little things like this. Um, he wasn't cutting it for me, so Nate sends me TJ Hawkinson. I send him a striving Michael Pittman. We have a few other players in the deal just to help balance it out a little bit, but um, and then in another league, I sent him away for a running back for Josh Jacobs, and um, so Michael Pittman's been good depth to my team as well as being able to be trade bait and to send him away for some decent players. But that's my takeaway from the first 4 weeks. Nate, bring you back in. Who do you think people should stay away from in the coming weeks?
If I may, before you go on to that, Brant, I feel your pain. I'm looking at my work league results from last week, playing my buddy Tyler. Projections were he was supposed to beat me 138 to 136. He did beat me 193 to 106 in a non PPR league. Man mentioned he had Jalen Hurts first of all with 34 points, Christian McCaffrey with 42, Chain with 25, and Brant. It could have been a lot worse. He's a big Michigan fan as well as me. He has Nico Collins sitting on his bench with 35 points. He literally could have beaten me 220 to 106 in a non PPR league. But with that, we'll circle back in your question. Can you please repeat it?
Yeah, before we do that, I'm just gonna say, Nate, it could always get worse. I know you love me saying this. You could have Fat Pat on your team. So, all right. Who are you staying away besides the obvious Fat Pat Fryermuth? Uh, who are you staying away from in the coming weeks?
Well, Brandon, unfortunately, at some point I will have to start Pat Fryermuth when Laporta goes on bye week. But for now, I'm enjoying the fact that I don't have to. I'll tell you what, I'm trying to stay away. I'm trying my darn hardest to stay away from anyone really who is a running back for the Jets. Breece Hall, very tempting. He's going to have some good weeks. Like you said last week, or like you said previously, last week, I beat you. Dalvin Cook, who only had 2 points. I don't want to start Dalvin Cook anymore. He's no go. Also, I'm gonna try to stay away from Minnesota running backs because you got Madison out there, and now you got Cam Akers, and I just don't see either one of them amounting to a whole lot for the rest of the season. I just don't, especially with Justin Jefferson out there, Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, despite the Vikings starting 1-3, is doing pretty good, and that hurts me to say that since he's a former Michigan State quarterback, and he came from Saugatuck, which, the history between PW and, PW and Saugatuck, he came from that area at least. But that's kind of who I'm pointing at staying away from for now. Puka Nacua, who, again, Brant, you mentioned, you never would have guessed in a million years would be this good, probably because, I don't know, 7 weeks ago, you had no idea who he was. Once Cooper Kupp comes back, I expect him to be the wide receiver too, taking a little bit less workload. I'm not exactly saying stay away from him. I just wouldn't expect as much out of Puka Nacua as we've seen.
Nate, my answer to that question is plain and simple. Joey B, Joey Burr, stay away from him. I mean, it hurts to say, but Joey Burr is hitting my bench this week. I'm putting Matt Stafford in for him. I need to see something out of Burrow before I can put him back in my lineup. He's been an extreme liability for the first 4 weeks of the season. He's done basically no good. It sucks. I hate having Joey B on my team right now. Got to bench him for a minute until he can start to prove some things. Not going to say to stay away from anyone else on the Bengals team because really it hasn't been really that bad. I know Ja'Marr Chase hasn't been putting up Ja'Marr Chase numbers, but I think he'll come around eventually. Other than that, I mean, it's basically what you said. Expect Puka Nacua to take a little bit of a drop down, come back down to earth. When Cooper Kupp comes back, and I mean, besides that, just at your own risk with a few other players, you know, be careful. Don't always listen to what the analysts are saying. That's all I'm gonna say. Is that do a little bit of your own research, figure it out because analysts are wrong, especially when it comes to Joey Burrow.
Well, Brant, it's been a lot of fun. It's been an honor catching up with you, and we appreciate everybody for tuning in today. We hope that you can join us next time. Brant and Nate go Beyond the Headset.